Okay. We'll call the October Civil Service Commission meeting to order. And going down for the approval of the August 3rd minutes. Do we want to read those? Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Approve it. I read it. Looked good to me, but I wasn't here.
Okay.
I just read it. It's all words.
Yeah, I looked at those.
Okay.
So we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those approved?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. And then approval of the special meeting that occurred on August 24th. We have a motion to approve those.
So move.
And second.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. And then do we have any public? No. Did we bring in the public? Oh,
yeah, I don't see, actually, sorry, right here.
So what time is 6 o'clock meeting start?
Let me,
50?
In Hawaii, what time would it start?
Early on time.
there we go.
Hawaiian time.
On time, early on.
You-
That's what
There you
I-
go.
Hi, am I there?
Oh,
there we go.
Okay. Um,
That's all that I see right now.
Am I there?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right.
okay, so I don't see any. Yep.
And
Okay, so
him,
no,
yep.
no public, anything for public comments. Moving on to old business. The external rules review update.
Yes, so I talked to Bob the other day and he's just gotten them back. He hasn't had a chance to fully look at them yet, though. He just got them, so he's gonna look at them in the next month, and then for our next meeting in November, be able to bring those to show all of you. So that's pretty much where it's at, but he did get them back.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Hey, Kim, am I at the meeting?
You are, yes.
Hope so.
All right. I apologize, gentlemen. My IT department, which is vice president of IT, is my 10-year-old grandson didn't show up, so sorry.
Small town America.
That is okay. You're
All
here
right,
now.
I can see you. I'm going to lower my hand and will be appropriately quiet.
Does he have a work permit? We may need some IT assistance.
Yeah, actually, I do have a permit for him. I've had
Okay,
him
great.
now, he's 21 years old and mute.
Perfect.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. Okay, so new business. Chief, I think you wanted to go over some lateral, the fire hiring process.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I sent the memo to the commission beforehand, just kind of give you a snapshot of the hiring processes that we use for both entry level and lateral firefighter testing. And as I noted in the memo, the hiring pools that we're seeing as of late have really changed. And part of the reason why is there's been a huge mass exodus of firefighters retiring. There was a change in the pension system. Some people have held off on retiring. And what we were seeing before when we would do a lateral test, we would see maybe one or two career firefighters that would be applying from either Boeing Fire, Joint Base McCord, some of the departments in Eastern Washington, and then the rest would be a handful of experienced volunteers. We're just not seeing that anymore. Earlier this year, and I think you guys know this, or last month, we lost 2 lateral firefighters to the city of Redmond. A lot of agencies are hiring lateral firefighters, and firefighters are taking that opportunity to go off and take those jobs just because they can compete for them now, especially when they have a little bit of experience in King County. And one of the things that we've been talking about is the process we're using effective. So you'll note in there the process, we have a national testing network, CPAT test, and they have to have training and experience. And that, for people that want to move on, is probably an okay way of going. But what we're trying to do is create a hiring process that removes those barriers. So people are like, maybe more like, you know what, I got nothing to lose by throwing my name in the hat. It's going to be a scored process through either an interview panel or a skills evaluation, and try to cast that net a little bit wider than we are right now. That's what the proposal is for the lateral test for this next process, just to see if it changes anything. We've also talked with the city administrator and the mayor about how we pay the firefighters. We have a 6-step pay scale that goes from step A to step D or E. And we normally start them at step B for laterals and step A for entry level. What we're talking about doing is maybe raising that up to C or D or even E, closer to the top to make the position look more attractive. Maybe even include years of service with higher vacation accruals. Similar tactics that you're seeing going on in the private sector to try to recruit, more highly qualified candidates. So that's kind of the target we're aiming at. And we're just talking about doing this for the lateral test this time. And then come back with a report afterwards when we certify the list to say, hey, this was our experience with this process, whether it worked or not, what we found worked well, what we didn't find worked well. And then bring that forward. I did talk with the city attorney about this, and one of the things that he said was if we were going to move away from national testing is we would need an objective process if we're going to do an interview process. So, i.e. an individually scored with different dimensions that we can individually score total, and then that creates the list. You'll notice in the memo, we talk about that process. If we end up with 20 or 30 applications, we're going to need to narrow that down. We've already started discussing that as well. We will look at their experiential level because that's what we're really targeting. So what is their years of experience as a career firefighter, as a volunteer firefighter? What certifications do they bring? If they're a volunteer, if they have 10 years on the job, that's probably equivalent to 5 years as a career firefighter because of the way we do our 24 months as a volunteer compared to 1 year as a career firefighter. So just looking at those mechanisms, so it is objective, so it does meet the process of what that's required through civil service, and then bring back a list to be certified at the next time around, hoping we get JBLM staff, Boeing staff, Eastern Washington career staff. The loss of our 2 firefighters last year, we have a third one that's been on leave for almost 2 years now. The loss of all 3 of those members will take 33 years of experience out of our department for 15 people. And that's a pretty big bite, and that's what we're trying to avoid. That's what we're trying to capture, that more experience group. So take any questions if you have them.
Is the city offering either lateral or entry level firefighters a bonus of any sort, like a hiring bonus of any sort? The reason I'm asking is because to me, the things you're looking into make sense.
Sure.
But if they came back and there was a hiring bonus too, I'd look at it a little bit differently. But with no hiring bonus, then it seems prudent to at least look at offering those kind of things to get a wider pool.
Sure. Yeah. So the policy that was written for the hiring bonuses, I was still in HR when actually that was written. And what was approved by council by policy is that hard to fill positions.
That's hard to fill.
Hard to fill positions are identified as it can be, the mayor has the authority to apply a hiring bonus.
Okay.
These positions aren't hard to fill, quote unquote. Normally we'll have 50 to 60 applicants on our entry level side, and we'll end up with 15, maybe 10 applicants on our lateral test. Now those candidates that we're receiving may not be as the highest quality that we're looking for, but there are applicant pools. It's not like the water department or some of the other departments that have been posted for how long? Months.
Almost a year.
Almost a year,
Since
yeah.
Since I've been here, so.
And they get no
So
applicants. Yeah.
Plus police is included in there as well, lateral police. About lateral police officers were written into that policy as well.
Right, so the plan is not to add a hiring bonus now. My thought was if we do have challenges, if this process doesn't realize anything else, we might be able to go back to that. But my thought was see if we can break down some of these barriers to try to cast that net to the people that may be out there that don't want to go through the CPAC, don't want to go through the national testing network for whatever reason. And create a situation like, hey, I might as well just throw an application. I got nothing to lose.
When did you figure out that it was a barrier? This has been, how long is the international CPAT testing part of the program?
Sure.
Ever?
Yeah, so we use public safety testing and national testing network. There are 2 local groups that are out there.
How long have we been doing?
We've been doing that since I've been here, and that's pretty standard. That's pretty standard.
When did you figure out that it's a barrier?
So, well, it's a perceived, first of all, it's a perceived barrier by people. I think it's a perceived barrier. That's why I'm saying we want to run data tests and try this. Let's see if my hypothesis is correct. But no, so 2 things. One is on the lateral side, we believe there's candidates out there that are full-time employees that don't want to go through that testing process because they've already been through it before. They've been on the job now 5 or 6 years. Why do I want to go and take a physical ability test and then go through this national? And they might get an interview. They just don't know. Versus trying to remove that portion. The entry level tests, there are barriers that are perceived in that, and it's been a topic of conversation in the fire service, especially for women and people of color. I wrote my master's paper on diversity, equity, inclusion here in the fire department, and I'll share it with you if you'd like, where we surveyed the different groups and talk about what do you guys see as barriers, the fee to take the test, the ability to have time to take the test, the quality that they do on the test, the having the time to practice. Does that really give us the best qualified firefighter candidate? We may be excluding incredible, remarkable candidates that we just don't tap into because they either don't go through that process or they don't go through that process very well. My recommendation for the entry level is going to be more on the recruitment side to keep that process. But this is lateral. This is hiring an experienced firefighter.
Right, so an experienced firefighter who took this test and has been working for 5 or 6 or 7 years.
Yep.
And the chances of them being overweight or physically unfit is zero.
No, but we have other ways that we could require them to see that and to make sure that this is for them. The reality.
And please stop me, somebody, if I'm wrong. Corporate world, if you're hiring, he wants to go from Macy's, and he just moves his career from one space to cautions in there, like, you know, in the first year, you've got to complete this and this and this, and be physically fit, or whatever the right terminology is. It seems to me that it's worth a beta test to do that. Just to remove those barriers alone. And for me, it doesn't have anything to do with color or whatever. It has to do with humans need to go from this point to this point. We need this pool of humans because we're down 3.
I'm sorry.
So is it quantifiable, your view or your data, that which is something that we can look at to say that there are individuals out there working through that more? I'm just gonna stay here. I'd rather,
Nothing quantifiable that I can point to. I will tell you that the 2 firefighters that we lost to Redmond, part of the reason why they went was because they didn't have to do that. It was an interview process.
so why they go to Red?
Because it's higher money, because they started to pay higher. It's a larger fire department. There's more opportunity for them. They can go to paramedic training that they can't go through here. They can work on a ladder company that they couldn't do here. It's closer to their home.
So all those things
They have
that
some other benefits like MEBT, which is
doing away with the international CPAP has nothing to do
no.
with it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. What's success? You know, so how do you say, yes, removing this test opened up the pool of applicants? Is it 2 more? Is it 5 more? Is it 10 more?
Great question.
Because it seems to me we're thinking about relaxing requirements, but we don't know what success on the other end looks like. So I'm not sure we know what we're trying to achieve.
No, great question. So what we're trying to achieve is a larger pool of qualified candidates that have more experience than what we've been seeing.
Okay, but is it 2 or is it 20?
I'll take 1 at this point,
Larger pool of qualified.
because I only need 1. Yeah, you know what I mean? I'm just kidding. But
Yeah, but 1 is an aberration or it's validation, and that's the question: is how do we know what?
yeah, no, my recommendation as part of that study, for lack of a better term, right, would be to take our last lateral process, looking at what we received for candidate, quality of candidate, and compare it to this next one. The hard part with that is there's so many variables, right? We don't know if the system, since the last time we've done this, has been washed clean of more lateral opportunities for the people coming, like Redmond, Bellevue, and all these other departments. At this point, I'm trying to avoid the definition of insanity, you know, and that's trying the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result.
Well, just to be clear, I'm telling you right now, not only United States, Snoqualmie, or King County, but literally all over the world have the exact same. Look at the club, just had a huge turnover. People, they don't want to work for minimum wage. They don't want to work for $20 an hour. You know, I'd just rather stay home or whatever that they're doing. Go back to school or whatever. So it's not unique to a firefighter being shorthanded over the last year or 2 years.
Right.
How long is this going to last I think, a good question. And what do we do in the interim? Maybe what do we need to be talking?
Yeah, I honestly see this as an interim step, as a way of trying something different to see how do you measure success is a really great question. You know what I mean? How do you measure effectiveness? At the end of the day, if we get 1 or 2 qualified, solid, experienced firefighters that come through the door 4 or 5 years under their belt, that's good for the city, and I would consider that a success. I wouldn't advocate for getting, doubling the number of applicants, and expecting 30 career firefighters that will be coming through the door.
So you keep saying qualified, good. So how do you know that without some sort of absolutely objective test?
No, great question. So we run our process right now, and we run them through the hiring process as this. We bring us to the board. When I first got here, even on our entry level test, we would interview all 3, and we were like, boy, which one do we choose? Right now, we interview all 3, and it's like, okay, there's one on there that I might want to, let's run through background, and then all of a sudden something comes up in the background, and we're like, okay, back to the drawing board. It hasn't been that extreme, but we're on the heels of doing that unless we don't change course. Is what my thought is.
Are you, how undermanned are you right now?
We're down 1 firefighter right now, and the second one that likely will be vacant here in the next, I'd like to say next month. That would be nice. But he's been out for 2 years, and he's in an L&I related lawsuit. So we don't know how long that vacancy is going to be. Okay, there. And that's just what we know today, right? I could get 2, resignations tomorrow. Or 4, yeah, you never know, right? So, and to your point, we've been brainstorming all different kinds of ideas, including so the council approved moving the fire captain. That's one of the vacancies that we're trying to fill. We filled 2 positions actually earlier this week. Tyler Fisher and Zach Schumann, they started with us on Monday. They filled those 2 vacancies of the people that just left. So the vacancy we have right now is firefighter that we had moved downstairs to be a training officer. We don't know when the other position is going to be vacant. But we don't know if other positions are going to come up here in the future though.
So you're advocating for both the change of the testing and then adding an objective interview and then also
so the interview was part of the process. The only thing we're advocating for is taking the first step out, which is removing the national testing network and the CPAC. The objective interview was part of it. Skills evaluation was part of it. We're still planning on doing it.
and then the additional part is having a higher wage.
Trying to attract a different clientele with a higher wage.
I think that is going to be a lot more productive than lowering standards, or moving standards, or having a different level of standards, or define it any way you want. And that's just my 25 cents. Not being in that business, you give people the incentive to come out here with money. This is a tough place to live. Income is not the bottom.
Yeah, I think what we would get with the higher incentive, we may see that just from that alone, but there may be a group of people that don't want to go through the national testing network process and CPAC to get that additional money. When I came out from Massachusetts, I had 6 years on the job in New England before I came out here. I was hired as an experienced lateral firefighter paramedic with Southwest Snoqualmie County. They required 3 years as a paramedic before you could actually test. It was an interview process. It was a skills evaluation. Out of that group, they were hiring 6 firefighter paramedics. They had a total of 19 people that applied. Because most people, when they get to that point in their career, are not going to do that, even though it is more money coming out here. So we just want to try different things. And again, we thought that maybe potentially removing the national testing network process just for this one time to see what it realized may be something.
One time is probably not enough information data-wise to make you sort of one way or the other.
But I think it would allow us to begin the discussion as to, the outcome. If we don't try it at all, then the only outcome we look at is the current existing way we do it. If we, and I would really personally, when we set this motion up, if it's going somewhere, is that we make sure in there that this is a one-time thing. And then whatever information, little, big, it was great, it failed, whatever happens, comes back for another discussion. then we can always say, hey, let's try it 1 or 2 more times, or let's do something different. So I would be interested in going forward on a one-time basis just to see if there's any results that are different from what we're getting now. Realizing there's a host of things over and above what we're doing that are gonna play into this, including what's left of COVID and everything else, so.
The candidates are still gonna be vetted. I mean, they're still gonna be, whoever comes through, they're still gonna do the skills evaluation, but it'll still. I mean, the first test, I mean, I've taken it. It's tedious. Like, I see where this is coming from. I mean, it's going through that test is not a fun experience. And sometimes it doesn't even give you the full scope of you answer those questions and it's like, well, they're both right. I'm just gonna pick one. And it doesn't really,
Which one, the international test?
yeah,
Which one is the physical test?
that's the CPAT.
That's the
CPAT.
CPAT.
Yeah.
Visibility test, yeah.
Yeah. And so the video test and all of that, I can see it's. If you're in a job and you're like, I'm content, well, I'd love to try to go see that and see if that job's an opportunity.
Objective interview, I think we should look at that very closely, relay with the other tests. Maybe I'm wrong, but you know, objectively needs to be looked at objectively.
Yeah, the proposal that we were going to use for this as if it moves forward, we start the advertising sooner than later. Because it's gonna be, I think, January 1st at the earliest if we pull the trigger on this now. When we do the advertising, we do the interview process, whoever, if anybody gets selected, they move into background checks. It's a 3.5 to 5 month process looking at hiring somebody. My thought was while we're doing that would be to develop those dimensions of scoring that we would do in the interview. Like, fit communication and have scoring levels that each member would do for each one of those dimensional scorings. They would be individually scored and then they would be put onto a spreadsheet, totaled up, and that would be the score for the interview process.
Part of the word objective in my mind is not because you are black or because you are of color or because you are a woman or a man.
No.
Those are not objective.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, and that's not what we're advocating for here. I was gonna save that for another meeting, but if you want me to jump into it, I can now.
Highly qualified people is what.
Yeah, no, we're talking about measuring it based on the skills and what we're looking for, but the traits of the knowledge. I was talking with the Toledo hiring recruiter out there because they've remodeled their entire hiring process. And really what they came down to is we have this process. Just because somebody scores high on the national testing network does not mean they're going to be a great hire. We need to look at the traits and attributes. Are they compassionate? Are they empathetic? Are they hardworking? Do they have a work ethic? What does their background look like? And measuring those sides of it. And the way they've gone about it is they have their initial test, they bring that next group forward, they put them all into background checks. Half of the people don't turn in the background check either because they're not interested in the job or they have something in the background. They know they're not going to pass. The group that comes out of that, they start doing background check calls on employment references. What are they compassionate? Empathetic?
What
And then
exactly is the CPAT? How difficult is that?
I can send you a video on it if you want to see it. The point that Chris is making, and this is what I was trying to get at is, I'm sorry, the chair is making is, and I don't want to speak for them.
No, you're fine.
But people that have been at a job for 5 or 6 years are gonna be, why am I gonna go do that? I got a job, I'm making these. That dumb and happy, I think is what they used to call it.
Is there, there's a big, that don't. The fast part is what we're worried about.
Well, no, and if you're concerned about that, no, seriously, if you're concerned about that, I have no problem moving that CPAT requirement into the first year. We'll make that part of the conditions of employment.
That's not a bad idea. So you got hired, but there's a time frame here that you have to pass the CPAT.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea.
Mhm.
Or you can run through something in-house, like what the volunteers do, like you do your own.
Right.
There's some legal requirements on that,
Oh,
just
is there?
because, yeah,
Okay.
that came out of the whole CPAT process. Believe it or not.
Okay, ignore that.
We need to make sure that we need to do it consistently, but no, we can make that as a requirement. That's not a problem. Or we can have them do it before the test. Before they're hired, and if they fail it, we can just make it a condition that they need to complete.
A couple of different ways of doing it.
It's not that hard of a test, but it's,
Well, what you said here is that, do away with, which is a
for
different,
this round as a trial.
the
yeah.
different direction that I'm thinking. Here. Having it as a requirement later on, some form of physical testing.
Ability test, yeah. The
Ability.
CPAT is the one to use. That's the nationally recognized standard. That is the one to use.
So you wanna put it in the, like, within the first year or before the end of the first year?
Like a condition of employment.
Yeah,
Mhm.
part of that's like being on probation.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and we write it in with certain other jobs, you know, for if they're required to get a certification. Like some of our water jobs, things like that, you know,
Right.
that it's, if they get hired with this certification, but they need this one within a year, it's written into their employment
Right.
that that's required.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, being a firefighter, when the rubber meets the road, it's very intense physically.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Sitting around and playing badminton or
That's
whatever.
cops. You're mixing this up.
You know, but you know, when you. He's not here to.
I know, exactly.
No, and so
I know, it's not fun.
that's my concern is to make sure that we have someone able to carry that hose up 2 flights or 3 flights.
Well, that's where the skills evaluation would come in, honestly. So we're still gonna include that in there. We do a skills evaluation with the top scores out of the interview process. They do a ride along with the crew, running through, climbing a ladder, running through, pulling hose, dressing the hydrant. We're gonna recognize that stuff and they're not gonna score very long. But yeah, no, to your point, yeah, no, we want physically fit, well
So
trained
can we
firefighters.
continue to write that in somehow in the application process that within 6 months, 8 months of a year, the first year, no more than that, I would think, to have some sort of a qualification, something written in there that covers that.
It can probably be written in the job
physical,
description
right.
when it gets posted.
Yeah.
You could just put that in.
Yeah.
We could write that in the job posting,
Would be a condition of employment.
condition of employment, and then it would be included in their offer.
We may go,
Like
honestly,
hire.
we may go through this process and not have anybody on the list.
I think you give them, 5 cents an hour, it adds up.
Yeah.
I think a pay increase, I think is gonna really open the door.
Mhm.
But we won't know until you open the door. We have enough money to sit and pay the firefighters.
So how wide is the paving? Because what I'm concerned about. is
We gotta- we got the-
With, hey, if we're starting people in the middle of. Then there's nowhere for them to go.
Yeah, no, so after they complete 5 years, they get a longevity step, and then at 10 years, they get another longevity step. So they'll continue, their salary will increase
With
Our-
a certain percentage.
2%,
after so many
4%.
years.
Where is the city relative to, say, Redmond?
Our salaries, so the way the state works is our salaries compare with similar sized fire departments. So compare, yeah. So the way the state works is, because they're unionized firefighters, sorry, when we negotiate their union contract, we're required to use similar sized agencies, which are based on population and assessed valuation. So 50% below, 50% above our rate. So we compare with Duval, Falls City.
Okay.
The Redmonds compare with Bellevue, Southwest Snoqualmie County Fire, Regional Fire Authority.
You said the word union, discussions.
We're funny.
I don't mean it.
No, it's just the process. So, and then
Process,
there's,
yeah.
and there's other benefits that the firefighters get or the firefighters get in other cities that they may not get here. As an example, Redmond and a few other cities get a benefit called MEDT, Mutual Employee Benefits Trust. When Social Security was taken away from pension employees, some cities chose to add that as a benefit. So those guys going to Redmond get 6.25% matching into a 401A MEDT account. Which adds up over a career, pretty significant.
Limit to be a firefighter.
There is, yeah. Sorry, Rod.
Hey, while you're looking at
Yeah, I got it right here.
okay, go ahead.
So step A is 65.79 per month, 6,579, and then top step B is 8,220. So we would be talking about either step C 7401 or step B 7812 to try to track. That wage scale is higher than Eastern Washington, probably higher than JBLM. So that may attract some of them. They also work longer hours.
And historically, lateral firefighters came in at step A.
No, so entry level was step A and step B is where we started laterals.
Okay.
6990 is where we would start that.
Before, so moving up a couple steps. Okay.
So what James is hashing out the numbers. Go ahead.
This is a mouthful in a very short period of time.
You know, you can handle
So,
Hey, you're in row.
Well,
So
oh,
you.
thanks.
So
Well, Dave,
you.
I'd like to-
I'm gonna add another question.
Yeah.
Where in the process does the certification list come back to us?
Yeah, so as you see there, the way we've been doing is national testing network, then we do an interview, and then we do the skills evaluation right along. And then that final scored list comes forward to you for certification.
Okay.
Our recommendation would be take the national testing network off and then do the interview process, skills evaluation right along.
Got something on.
Oh, I'm just,
Dollars.
I'm thinking the pay band is not wide enough. Looking at the difference between the numbers.
The firefighter would agree with you.
Well, granted, I'm certainly not looking to get the city to collect bargain from all I'm saying is that I'm concerned about, given the current cost of living adjustments that would need to be made. I'm concerned that we're not competitive. That's just,
So that's been an ongoing conversation citywide as well. So the
Not
firefighters.
just the firefighters.
Yeah, it's citywide. They're doing a conference class city right now for the other departments. We just settled this contract earlier. They actually settled it late last year, early this year, the contract. They settled on 3.4% as a COLA for this year, 3.4% next year as a COLA. And then CPI W with a ceiling of, I think, 3.5%. Yeah, 3.5% and a floor of 2%. We're in a high inflation time with 10% CPI, and they're looking at, wait, we just settled for 3.4. Now, the mayor has proposed in the budget some additional funding in the fire department budget for retention, as well as focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion program for next year. So trying to find a different way to go about our testing to try to bring in more people of color and women that we're just not seeing. And that's on the recruitment side, right? That's something.
Why is that a requirement?
Why is it a requirement?
Because
Because,
mayor wants it.
well, no, because the fire service is falling behind on this issue,
What issue?
on people of color and diversity within the fire service. We
But
should,
if they
Wanting
can't
it to
fight
reflect
fires,
more of the community,
at a
like
minimum.
wanting that's kind of where some of it comes from is, does our workforce, does our firefighters, do they reflect the community?
Yeah, there
As
is
far
a
as-
belief out there, okay, whether you believe it or not,
Yeah.
there is a belief that a more diverse workforce provides a higher level of service to the community.
If they're qualified.
Oh, of
Correct.
cour's, yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
exactly, yeah, no, our,
Yes,
I'm with
yes.
him.
no,
Yeah,
that's
oh,
why I was
yeah.
talking about the conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I didn't want to have that, I was picking that for the next meeting, because I knew it was gonna be a longer conversation than what we're trying to deal with here.
My background is aviation. Airplane didn't give two flying flips. Who was where you were, what you were doing, how you were raised, how you were born, what color this, white, I mean, nothing. So it was absolutely you had to perform. And that's where I am mentally, perform the job. I don't give a, if you're 2 feet tall, you can do it. I
Yeah,
don't
no,
care.
our problem is always when we advertise, when we hire positions, we end up with 98% white men.
Well, then change the
but you're not
advertising.
gonna get equality. If you were advertising for knitters, you get 98% women. There are some jobs that are male oriented more just because.
I'll share my research paper.
Okay.
It may enlighten you guys a little.
see the same thing in fact.
It is. It's a recruitment. When you have a pool of 98% white guys, you're gonna get 98% white guys on the other end. If you've got a pool of 50% men, 50% women, and 20% people of color mixed in there, that should be what you get out the other side. And that's what we're talking about, focusing on. Qualified candidates to actually come in. My concern is serving the community. Right? So that's my goal.
So when you go out for the recruitment part, go to the military, because there you have strong bodies, strong minds, and with all sorts of different diverse jobs.
Yeah, oh, no, for sure. That in colleges, looking at that, looking at athletes.
I just hope we don't end up down the road of percentages. We don't have enough percentages of Chinese, we don't have enough percentages of COVID. That's what I'm saying.
Well, first off, that would be illegal, so we would not.
Correct.
No, well, that's what, exactly, but that's how it ends up. Well, we gotta open the door for this because, qualified people for firefighters. When my house is burning, that's what I want. I want someone to come by and fix the problem.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I want as
And
well.
if they're all women, I don't care. As long as they're doing the job and doing it good, and perfect, I mean, and if they're all white, then I don't care. I don't think the majority of people in their houses burn that. No, not enough women.
Yes,
Stand back a
but
little
let's
bit.
not write an application. Excludes them from applying.
Right, it shouldn't.
This is a much larger conversation.
Yeah.
We're gonna get through tonight.
I'm being verbose.
No, I understand that.
You know, but,
And my office is always open. If you guys wanna come chat with me about this, I'll share
Where
with you
is
my
your
research.
office?
It's
Where is
looking
your
at the
office?
process on the front
Oh.
end, that this conversation is looking at the process on the front end of
Yeah.
how do we open the opportunity for a more diverse group to apply for the jobs. At the end of the day, the most qualified person is still going to get the job.
Right.
But we would just like to make sure the opportunity is there for a full diverse group of people to have access to the position.
Wouldn't know where it was, so. But want to be a firefighter.
I'll save my comment. We'll talk about it some other time.
Okay, back to.
I don't want to be a firefighter because I think they're idiots for running into burning buildings. I'd rather be a cop. They run in bullets. So it's just a personal thing.
I'd rather fly an airplane. Yes.
And the main space fire.
So
back to the original.
Yeah.
Back to that.
Any more discussion on?
You want to try and couch it into a motion?
I can, you remembered it.
I was just gonna say, why don't we put it to the motion that we eliminate the national testing for one lateral hiring cycle and evaluate. it.
And then I'd modify that with CPAT to be
Administered
Within-
within 1 year of employment.
for condition of employment app.
I second that.
Yeah, something on that line, I don't have a problem with that.
That was it.
So normally civil service handles the testing process, right? But I think we can add the piece in there about the civil service commission is recommending,
Gotcha.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
To include that. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. If you're happy with that, I mean, you're the one that's.
That was my target. I mean, the reality is until the list is certified, we can't do any final reviews. So if we come back with results and you go, boy, that really wasn't worth it, we can scrap that and go back to the drawing board. That is a choice. I'm not advocating for that. I'm hopeful that by changing up the
Okay.
process, we're gonna have at least a couple of experienced firefighters in the final listing process that we can interview to try to regain some of that experience we just lost. That's
And I
really.
think it's gonna be a little while yet before the job market starts opening up again. It's tough, everywhere.
Well, that goes back to that whole other conversation, target recruitment, trying to get people in the process that are gonna make good firefighters. That's a conversation that's going on all over King County. It's not just here.
It's all over the world.
Not just King County.
No, I mean the firefighter side, diversity, equity, inclusion, people calling and that kind of stuff.
All right,
Okay,
I will.
So moved as discussed.
and we have someone seconded. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay. motion-
Thank you.
Motion carries.
That was a very good
Who
discussion.
That is.
seconded Who seconded it?
That's based so much better the conversation.
Well, I don't know, I mean, you guys would know, or you, Chief, you would know better, like, I don't know with these applicants that come in, if you can have a questionnaire after the test of, would you have applied if you had to go through national testing? I don't even know if
You can always ask,
Yeah,
but typical survey respondents are probably 5% on the exit interview process. If they didn't get the job, you're not gonna be pretty excited about.
that's true, yeah.
Or they're gonna tell us, yeah, hell, I would have done anything to work here, because this is the department I want to work at. Even though
Oh,
they've
yeah,
applied for 6 other positions
yeah,
in 4 different departments.
Yeah, so it's.
We could do
You're
it
gonna
now.
have to look at, what the pipeline is.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to see, okay, when we had the test, we got 10, stop having the test, we got 50. Okay, that sounds significant.
yeah,
I wonder, to your point, I wonder if we were to ask the question in the interview panel, did not going through the national testing network have an influence on why or not?
If you're allowed to ask it, I would definitely.
Yeah, it could be a non-scored question.
well, you had mentioned that the two that left and went to Redmond, part of that too is they didn't have to go through national testing, right?
Right.
So I mean, that,
PD,
I suspect that was a lot more about the dollars.
Actually-
There's Fun stuff that made it easier for them, but yeah.
Their starting pay was less than what they were making. They were 10 years, 7 years. But their wages gonna exceed it after a year, is what they told me.
Yeah, that's why I was concerned about it. Yeah, they don't feel like they're not going in
Right.
fast enough.
When he reaches that point.
I think that's something to be pursued later on. You know, the money part, compensation part.
Yeah, it's a really challenging time. Public services have been stacking wages and raising them up and trying to attract more. It's just causing more inflation in the public sector, which taxing limitations,
Well,
those
that-
other issues.
Cities, especially small municipalities, be burnt on the back end. So,
Snowball.
because that's what broke Stockton
San Jose, oh yeah, all of them.
was.
Orange County.
No,
Yeah.
on the PD questions, they have a non-scoring question, it's 10 scores. Possibly there's a way, some sort of phraseology, you could throw in an extra question. If they don't answer it, it doesn't affect the score.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, just
Yeah.
to try to dig into that, because that could be a deal.
Mhm.
How was that?
Like you said, maybe it's legit or they're just blowing smoke.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or they could say they just took it and didn't want to bother.
You're gonna be part of the interview, right? You want you to dig.
Which side of the table? I said I was too old.
No, I'm not, yeah, you can't, nobody can. Yeah. There is that. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Wanna make sure.
Well, that's all we have for
Kim
new
hasn't been
business.
around yet.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Thank you. Appreciate the
Yeah.
support on that issue. I know that's a big ask. We should probably have a meeting next.
I will be gone.
Really?
We're getting Graham and better.
Yeah. I'll be gone, I'm going to the Caribbean for.
Why don't we all go there and have
Yeah,
a
right.
meeting there?
Why don't you host a meeting there for us?
November is a tough month around here. Who wants to be
Yeah.
here with the high wind and the rain?
Oh, fun.
Caribbean sounds so much